All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's been a while. I'm sorry I missed the last recording, and I'm sorry this one is popping up a couple days late. Um, we are going to talk about collaboration within the structure of an IEP meeting today. For some of you, this is going to be a little bit of review based on EDUC 392 and the discussion of IEPs that we had there. For others of you, this is going to be your first time hearing a lot of this information, and there's going to be some gaps, I think, in the overall context of what we're talking about today, as you haven't gotten the legal background of the IEP, and I am not going to I'm not going to go over that at this point. So we're really going to be focusing just on the collaboration component. Again, for those that took 392 already, this should be filling in one more piece of the pie for those that have not taken it yet. Kind of keep this information in mind as you go into taking 392 in either this summer or next fall. So the first thing to understand is that there is a relationship between the IEPs and RTI, as we spoke about before, but they are indeed very different processes. The RTI process, while it's governed, that there is governance over it through the state and local agencies. It's not governed the same way, nearly the same way as IEPs. IEPs are a strictly regulated process. They involve legal documents. The IEP becomes a legal document. It specifies who has to be there, what their roles are, how the meetings are going to look, who has rights, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there's just a lot that goes into the IEP that does not go, that doesn't appear in the RTI process. So as a result, the meeting itself, when it comes to collaboration, the meeting itself is going to be a totally different meeting, but the amount of collaboration and the way that the collaboration works is a lot more similar between the two. So I'm going to be jumping around a little bit and not really talking specifically to what is on these slides. I'm just more kind of commenting and talking as I see fit. So I apologize if you're following these bullets and it doesn't seem to necessarily line up, but we'll get to where we need to be. All right, so let's take a quick look at the nuts and bolts of the IEP so that we do have a little bit of context for what we're talking about. So the first thing is that the IEP, or the Individualized Education Plan, is a special education student's curriculum. It's a legally binding document that says what each party is going to do throughout the year to meet the goals that are defined in the IEP. All IEPs are in place for 1 year. They have to be reviewed and updated at least annually. They can be revisited more often than that. And they're designed to ensure that a child who cannot or does not contact the curriculum, the regular education curriculum, in the same way as his or her peers, is still able to meet either those goals or the goals that are deemed most appropriate by the team for that child. So those could be goals that are not grade level goals, that are not, in some cases, maybe not even academic in nature. They could be behavioral goals or self-management goals or communication goals. There's all sorts of different things that typically don't seem like they fall within the purview of the academic idea of school that can become academic goals through the IEP. So that's kind of the document that we are working off of. What we care about a little bit more today are who are the participants, who are the players in the IEP process, what role do they play, and what is their responsibility both within the IEP meeting as well as once the IEP meeting is over and before the IEP meeting even begins. So, people that we expect to see, or in some cases must, in some cases probably will see in the IEP meeting. Number one is the student's parents. IEPs are a relationship between the school, or an agreement between the school and the parents. They were largely developed around the idea of ensuring that parents do indeed have a say in their child's education. There were initially a lot of problems with, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, with schools and facilities determining what is best for the child without the parents' input. And there are some should be obviously significant issues in that. So a lot of the IEP process is built around protections for the parent. You have to have at least one general education teacher that has some level of knowledge around the student's educational level. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are a teacher who works directly with the student, but if the student is functioning on a 4th grade level, let's say you have a 7th grader functioning on a 4th grade level, you should have someone who's familiar with regular ed 4th grade skills. You may additionally have someone who's familiar with regular ed 7th grade skills, and they both will be able to provide some level of input there. You are going to have at least one special education teacher. That special education teacher most likely is going to be the child's actual teacher of record. Sometimes the child lives in an inclusion classroom or in a general education classroom, in which case that gen ed teacher is going to be represented there. And the special education teacher might be someone that is not working directly with the child. So that's going to be that's something that you want to kind of keep an eye on. You are going to have a representative of the school system. This can be a case manager. Sometimes there's someone who is very comfortable with all of the legal implications, who knows all of the procedural pieces and they kind of monitor that through all the IEPs. Sometimes this is an administrator. Sometimes this is, in some cases, it's a lawyer. But you're going to have some representative for the school system that can kind of push everything along. Oftentimes, you are going to have an individual or someone who can interpret evaluation results. So outside of the academic testing that's done, there is also diagnostic educational testing that is done. That is someone, and again, this is more in 392, that is someone who deems whether or not the student qualifies for special education services. There are probably going to be a number of other individuals who are there that are providing services. The list that I just gave you are the lists that's largely required. This subset of individuals are not people that are required, but are rather people who regularly work with the student. So this can be a speech therapist, an occupational therapist, a behavioral specialist, a physical therapist, a student counselor, a specialized PE teacher, maybe a reading teacher. In some cases, this could be someone who is not a part of the school system, but is providing outside services to the student. So this could be any one of a number of people, depending on what types of services the child is receiving. When appropriate, it's going to be important for the student to be involved in this collaborative process in the IEP meeting. This is not always going to be the case. In some cases, it's not going to be appropriate, but where the child can and where it is meaningful, having the student be a part of that team could be very, very helpful. There are some other who may end up at an IEP meeting, advocates, who are people who, by some experience, are familiar with the rights and responsibilities of the parent and other parties, and are often there to ensure that the parents are able to advocate for and ask for the things that they are entitled to. In some cases, advocates can be very, very helpful. In some cases, they can be very challenging and in the worst cases, damaging to the IEP process. But in those situations, that's usually where the parents and the school district don't necessarily agree with the determinations that are being made. I'm actually going through something right now where there is that discrepancy, and there are advocates involved who are much more familiar with the law than the parents are, which is why they're at the table. You can have actual educational lawyers at the table for either the parent or the school district, again, for those same types of reasons. You might have translators, family members, or friends, but all of those people end up getting approved kind of through the parent. So as we saw in the RTI meeting, it was kind of whoever the school felt was appropriate to best serve the needs of the school. There was no strict, this is who is going to be at the RTI meeting. We must have one of these and three of these and two of those. It really is, one, who's available, but two, how do we best represent the student population through the teacher population? Not the case for an IEP. For an IEP, it's anyone and everyone who has a significant impact on the decision-making related to that student's skills or goals or what is going to be worked on through the year. So with all these people at the IEP meeting, with a different charge than those in the RTI meeting, there's a different level or different type of collaboration that is going to need to occur. So at the RTI meeting, and I'm going to try and contrast these as best as possible. At the RTI meeting, a teacher is coming for the first time, probably the first time, and then follow-up times, with a specific set of problems that need to be hashed out. The timeline for implementation, for remediation, and for intervention is going to be a couple or 3 months. You'll have another opportunity to get back together, reevaluate, see what needs to be done. Is there progress? Does it need to be changed, et cetera, et cetera. The IEP meeting is a one-time shot for everyone to get together to not decide what to do next, but rather to present what has already happened and what is going to be happening going forward. Much, much more akin to a parent-teacher conference than to an RTI meeting. So when it comes to collaboration, all of the collaboration that is actually going to happen surrounding the IEP is going to occur before and after the IEP meeting. The role of the IEP meeting itself is to present information, present goals and strategies, and agree to them or disagree to them. Most of the time, simply agree to them. That doesn't mean that there isn't going to be a back and forth. That doesn't mean that there isn't going to be this working together to figure out what's appropriate and who's going to meet it and all those things that happen in the RTI meeting. But because you know the kid, you know what their problems are, you know what progress they've made or not made, all of that collaboration actually occurs before the meeting starts. So when you get to the meeting, you are not necessarily deciding on goals. You've already decided on those goals. You are simply at the meeting presenting those goals to the parent. Now, if the parent disagrees, that's a different situation where you may have to make a couple of modifications, and that's totally fine if that does happen. That's why they're there, and that's why it's that open collaboration between those two parties. But when you're talking about the collaboration between the general education teacher and the special education teacher and the paraprofessional on deciding who's going to provide what kind of support, where, who's going to provide which interventions, where are these hours or minutes, special education hours and minutes going to come from. All of that needs to happen ahead of time. And when you get to the IEP meeting, you as a school are kind of presenting a unified plan for what is going to happen going forward. Again, most of the time, parents agree to this plan. They understand that you've done the legwork, that you are making decisions that are in the best interest of their child. And if they disagree, they have an avenue in the meeting for discussion and outside the meeting, if need be, through the legal system. The more you collaborate, the more you inform, the more you work with each other, the less confrontational that's going to be. So while the meeting itself is this presentation of the plan from the school to the parent, that doesn't mean that has to be the first time, and more importantly, shouldn't be the first time that the parents are hearing of these plans. So having pre-IEP conversations with the parents regarding any specific behavioral, academic, self-management, communication goals that they want you to work on is encouraged, should be highly encouraged, so that you are not hearing something for the first time when you get to the meeting in terms of a parent concern, and they are not hearing something for the first time when they get to the meeting about what it is that their child's education is actually going to look like in the coming year. All right. So having this open dialogue between educators, between professionals before the meeting, and then between teacher and parent, between service providers and parents, and between service providers and teachers ahead of time is going to make the meeting really an easier process. You're going to be able to just check a bunch of boxes, read a bunch of documents, and be on your merry way. The less communication there is ahead of time, the more possibility for contention or disagreement that you open yourself up to in the meeting. Again, contention and disagreement doesn't always have to be contentious and disagreeable. It just means that you may have to amend things or revise the document during the meeting, which just leads to lack of clarity and is not an ideal scenario. So this is just talking about the kind of what I mentioned before with the similarities and dissimilarities between RTI and IEP. So with the conference itself, I'm not going to go over this. This is more logistical, but look over this and kind of see how you envision each person contributing to the meeting itself in the actual meeting. So if we compare this slide, slide 7, with, where'd it go? Slide 4, who is in the IEP, you should pretty easily be able to see who has what roles. Who is going to have these speaking points, who's going to talk, who's going to contribute. When you match the process with the participants, with the structure, the IEP meeting should flow pretty easily. So as we look at this slide and looking at that first bullet point, that the collaboration for the IEP team takes place behind the scenes, that's a little bit misleading. When I read that line, which myself or Dr. Darcy wrote a while ago, I realized that it tends to, or it has this implication that it's referring to collaboration for the IEP team relative to the meeting takes place behind the scenes. And that is true. But what's important to understand about the IEP process is it is an ongoing collaboration. So that behind the scenes is really referring to the ability of your educators, your paraprofessionals, your parents, your administrators, your service providers to collaborate and work together throughout the school year. The RTI process, we come together for these meetings, we collaborate, and then it's one teacher and one support staff that go off and do their thing and report back. For the IEP, the members of that team should be in constant communication with each other about everything throughout the school year. So that can go from schedules to goals to progress to the need for interventions and beyond. So I might have, the special education teacher might have, let's say, 8 students in my classroom. Those 8 students each get speech, PT, OT, and adaptive PE every week. Sometimes it's twice a week for 30 minutes. Sometimes it's 5 times a week for 20 minutes. Sometimes it's this, sometimes it's that. So right away, there's this logistical challenge that has to be worked out for all of your students. Imagine sharing a Google Calendar with 6 other coworkers, and you all put all your schedules on that one calendar. That's what it's like for special education teachers, or can be like for special education teachers. It doesn't sound like scheduling should be part of the collaboration process, but right from the jump, if you can't get on the same page about your schedule, you're already working from a point of frustration for whoever's schedule did not get accommodated. So making sure that you are working with your service providers who have to go to different schools, who have to be in different places, who have the 50-person caseloads, they have to see everyone every week. Working with them and being flexible with them sets the stage for you to have a positive collaborative environment throughout the year. Once you get scheduling done, that's probably the easy part. Now we're talking about implementation, support, and development of the goals that they are working on. I know I had, when I was teaching, we had an OT in our school, and I will fully admit that she and I did not see eye to eye. We had different methodologies, we had different attitudes. It wasn't a great working relationship, professional working relationship. I was able to schedule with her, I was able to do all those things, but I was not good at following up with implementation of her strategies in my classroom. And we got to a point during my first year of teaching. She came into my classroom. I had not done something that she had asked me to do, which was on me, and she made some snide comment in front of my students, in front of my staff, regarding not implementing her intervention. And she went back to her office, and I came down, and we were able to, started off not so calm. It turned into a very calm and very productive conversation that we were able to work through. And that was on, I don't think she reacted appropriately, but it was absolutely on me not being as collaborative, as open-minded towards this collaboration that as I needed to be. And without that, it's not me that suffered. I wasn't enjoyable for me to be in that situation. It wasn't her that suffered. It wasn't enjoyable for her to be in that situation. But at the end of the day, we still go to sleep and wake up and are fine. But the child struggled writing. And I was working on writing in one way, and she was working on writing in another way, and we weren't gelling. And that hurt the child. So we were able to reach that understanding that we were going to do this and work on this and do this. And from there, the child was able to succeed more because we were on the same page. So ensuring that your personalities, ensuring that your that your beliefs and understanding of how a child should be educated needs to be worked out. All of those pieces are what's going to make your collaborative process go forward. So it's not enough for you to say, okay, you're getting 30 minutes of speech twice a week. You are going to learn in speech how to do A, B, and C better. It's on you, the teacher, to work with that speech therapist and say, all right, what did we work on? How can I support that in my classroom? How can those goals that were communicated during the IEP meeting be translated effectively into a classroom setting so that we can see the progress that we expect to see? By the time you get to the IEP meeting, all of the backstory should be worked out. We should have this understanding of individually as educators of where the touchy points are. The OT and myself, we needed to work out, like, okay, how are we going to present this goal? Because we know we don't fundamentally agree, but we want to make sure the parent is comfortable with the service that the child is getting, and you're able to work through those things. So there's a lot of interpersonal conversation that needs to occur, that is going to allow for success to happen. So the other place that collaboration needs to occur for the IEP team overall is not just on implementation, but on intervention. While it would be nice to think that we'd be able to sit at the beginning or middle of the year and be able to talk about a bunch of progress that was made and everything, all the wonderful things that we're going to do over the next year. And then over the next year, have some other teacher or myself, yourself, be able to implement all of those goals with complete success. That sounds nice, but I think it goes without saying that is probably not necessarily going to be the standard. The more probable thing to occur is that throughout the year, there are going to be times where you have some hiccups. You have some interventions that are not working. You start on a new skill set that the student is not necessarily yet succeeding with. And you need to actually be able to intervene. Now, some of these interventions are going to be kind of contained within each person's specific domain. So like if I have if I'm the special education teacher, my student is in my class all day, every day for academics, and they're struggling with a math goal, a new math goal. I don't have to reach out to everyone and convene a meeting and get the whole team together to say, okay, how are we going to help this child with math fluency? Same thing for speech or OT or PT or any of those other services. But often there's going to be at least one other person that either is also working simultaneously on a similar type of goal, or is someone that could potentially help support an intervention for a goal that you are struggling with. So if I am the most obvious situation here is if I have a student who is housed in the self-contained classroom, but is in a general education classroom for math or reading or one subject area. That student or that other teacher is going to be someone who is going to be able to support an intervention in some way, shape, or form. Conversely, let's say they are in the general education or the inclusion classroom for a math class, and I, the self-contained or the special education teacher, don't teach math, but the child is struggling with a math concept. I, the self-contained teacher, might be able to provide support for the regular ed teacher for those math skills. So when you do hit these hiccups and that kind of cross personnel support has there's a lot of opportunity for that, regardless of what service that is. But your ability to respond to the current needs of the child, not the needs as set forth in the IEP, but the actual current needs of the child, and be able to come up with interventions, work together, identify that new level of support, and be successful with it, again, is going to determine how successful you are overall with the child's IEP. So long as the goal isn't changing and the setting isn't changing, there isn't necessarily a need in those situations to reconvene the IEP. Let's say, though, that you get to a point where the child is struggling in that general education math class to the point where they really aren't keeping up and they aren't doing well. And it might be better for the child to decrease the number of minutes that they are in the self-contained, or sorry, in the general education classroom for math. It might be a case that there might be a teacher that goes into the general education classroom to further support with math. Those types of decisions are team decisions. By team, I do mean the relevant parties. So if I'm making that determination for a math class, I don't necessarily have to involve the speech and the PT and the OT, but I definitely need to involve the SPED teacher, the gen ed teacher, the parent, and the administrator. So in those situations, reconvening the IEP team as appropriate to help make those determinations is going to be might become necessary. Those meetings are very different. Those meetings are a lot shorter, but you have to make sure, because we have a legally binding document, that we are meeting the terms of that agreement. So again, your ability to collaborate, your ability to work with and communicate with and be a generally open team member for all those other different groups is going to be able, or going to determine the level of success that you have. Okay, I'm not going to go through the components of the IEP. This is much more relatable in 392. Um, let's see here. Yeah, no, I think that gets us to a pretty good spot. So with collaboration in the IEP, the kind of take home points are that the meeting itself is a result of the collaborative process. Where in RTI, the meeting is the collaboration. In an IEP, the meeting is the outcome, the result of how successful we were at collaborating, and a statement of how we will continue to collaborate as the next year unfolds. Having an open mind, having an open heart to different theories, different methodologies, different practices is key to making sure that every one of your children is serviced in an appropriate way. It can be a challenge when you are a special education teacher and you are working with a significant number of IEP students. Balancing all the different things that they need can most definitely be a challenge. I don't want to undersell that. But once you get in a rhythm, once you develop a relationship with all of those service providers, with the other teachers, with those that are going to have an impact, that's going to allow for things to flow much, much more smoothly. Parents pick up on that. Parents see the degree to which the educators successfully work together. And the more you can, the better off you're going to be. All right, that concludes this little informational piece. I hope it provides some sort of insight into the collaboration that goes in to an IEP and an IEP team. If you have any questions about any of the assignments, please don't hesitate to reach out. We have just one more module. I believe that opens up after spring break. I'll have to double check Moodle on that. But we're getting towards the end, and I think we're in pretty good shape. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.